Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Back Stronger. I'm Dana Brooks of Fasig Brooks Law Offices, and I'm joined with my law partner, Jimmy Fasig again. How are you doing, Jimmy?
I'm doing amazing. I'm excited for another comeback story. What we do every week is we bring you comeback stories from people in the community that have faced adversity and have overcome challenges and come back even stronger, usually by giving back to the community in some way. And today we have an extra special guest for you.
We have got Joanna Johnson, and she is so beloved in the North Florida community. She runs Avalon treatment centers. She's got quite a story herself, and when you see her and you see the energy and youthfulness she brings, you won't believe when she tells you how old she is and how long she's been helping people. But she had kind of a very difficult journey herself, like so many young women do. They, especially whenever there's sexual abuse at a young age, and that informs a lot of the decisions they make and how they think of themselves and the people they're exposed to. And she had a lot of bad ACE events, adverse childhood events that shaped her life.
We're going to introduce you to Joanna Johnson, and she is a perfect example of someone who has gone down deep and had some major challenges, but the reality of it is the bigger the challenges we overcome, the greater we have, the more we have to offer when we overcome that challenges to the rest of the world. So she's brought that wisdom back, and she's giving back to the community. And
the more good you can do. So many people, need to remember that. Whenever you get on the other side of something, look behind you and see who needs some help pulling them along. And so she does that, and she lives her life like that all the time. She's out there to try to help deal with the scourge of drug use in our communities, especially our rural, underserved communities. And she's out there every day in the communities, in the neighborhoods, meeting with community leaders, dealing with law enforcement, whatever she can do to try to help the people who come to her that a lot of times get forgotten. So when we get back after our break, I'm going to actually be the interviewer this time. So our law partners were otherwise engaged. So when we get back, you'll see my first part of my first interview with Joanna Johnson right after this.
I recently had a new client, and she suffered a mild traumatic brain injury. And she had no idea what had happened that caused her to be injured.
Gotcha.
But it turns out she had fallen into a pit at an oil change station. And it was 100% their fault.
Oh, wow.
But her injury made her not even understand
her injury, and it makes me so frustrated because folks that suffer concussions or mild traumatic brain injuries, it's really difficult for them to know what happened and to understand the difference in what their life was and what it is now because of the nature of their condition. And so the insurance companies need to recognize the full value of that.
Instead of taking advantage of that very unique situation.
It took her family telling her, you need to call an attorney. Her family coming with her to the appointment to say, these are the differences, to get her in there, and now we're able to help her.
I love that. And we are back for our first segment with this tireless community leader, Joanna Johnson. Take a look. Hello, Joanna.
Hi, Dee.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, how you spend your days.
I am the dinosaur, probably, of this area's counseling industry. I own the Avalon Treatment Centers, which is an outpatient program. We've been doing it now for 30 years. We started in Crawfordville, so that's still the love of my base. Anything from drug addiction, anger management, domestic violence, even anti-theft classes, but we're strictly outpatient.
Gotcha. Well, everybody in the community knows Joanna Johnson. They know of your work with Avalon. How did you get involved in it? What made you want to become a mental health counselor?
Well,
and
I never
treatment?
did, actually. I'm a recovering addict. I started using heroin when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
I stayed a drug addict probably for close to 15 years, from one drug to another. And then I moved to Woodstock, New York during the hippie 60s and worked at the Woodstock Festival. And I had a boyfriend at the time that was a heavy rocker, and my children called him one day and said, if you don't do something, she's going to die. And he took me over to this creek, which is the picture on my first book. And I thought we went there for some kinky sex, but actually it was to show me that something had to change. And I had a moment, Dana, and it was a weird thing to explain, but I all of a sudden knew that I couldn't get from one rock to another if I didn't balance myself in that water. You know, the water runs fast in a creek. And then it dawned on me that if I was ever going to be a good mom or even like myself, I had to get clean, and I did, and I've never relapsed since, and that's 40 years ago.
How did you get clean, and what is it about your story that you think allows you to help so many people? I think you've done what, 30,000 psychosocial assessments,
and over 30,000 at this point.
Counseled what, 12,000
at least
addicts?
Yeah, at least. And we have a really excellent success rate. If you can look at 40%, 50%, you're way ahead, and we're above that. For me, it's a personal thing. For me, I'm nothing special, and if I could do it, you can do it. I had children, I had failed marriages, I had poverty, I had wealth, I had every dimension that anybody does, except I was a drug addict. And one day I just wasn't any longer. It was horrible. It took me 5 years to feel healthy again. Living in the Woodstock area really helped me a lot because it was great music and great. Being a hippie is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, so I lived with these other women who were all recovering, and I had a lot of support. And we run our practice the same way. We're all about women. We're all about support. We've built 4 shelters for women in 30 years.
Wow.
The first one in Key West called Samuel's House. And then I built a shelter in Woodstock called Family that's still working. And the goal was always to help women with children get clean, and that's still my passion.
You've helped a lot of families, especially in our area. How did you get to this area of Florida?
With a man. How does any woman get anywhere? Followed him after leaving Canada and coming back here, and fell in love, believe it or not, with Crawfordville. I know that sounds a little. I love it. I live in Sopchoppy. I live in the area I work. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
It's hard to find matching natural beauty to that area.
But our area is under tremendous threats right now from drugs, and our area is really desperately in need of more services.
Yeah.
And we can't give it to them, and that kills me.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. How is Avalon? How are you funded? Who are your client base? Are you turning away people? Just tell us a day in the life for you.
We don't turn away anybody, so we do probably 30%. We're a nonprofit, so we do probably 30% free work, so we don't always get a paycheck, my staff and I. And if we do, it's certainly not what we're worth. We do get a check from the Department of Corrections because we are, and have been for the last 3 years, their representative. So anybody on probation would have to come to us. But it's nothing like what we would get if we were a private factor.
Are there duplicative services? Are there several people trying to reach the same people you are, or not enough of y'all trying to reach a need that is clearly
When we first started, it was myself and Dis Village, and they hated us because we were the renegades. We weren't what you expected to see in counselors. We didn't dress properly, and we came to work in jeans and t-shirts and
just a little different image, I guess.
And we're still there. I mean, we're still very basic. And everybody that works for me is recovering.
Yeah, I've I've often heard that it's better when you're dealing with someone who's got an addiction issue. Peer counseling is much more effective.
The best counselors are recovering addicts.
And why is that? Can you speak to
Because
that?
would you want to tell your story to someone who doesn't understand it, or
It's like going
has
to a
never?
male obstetrician?
Correct. I mean, seriously, do you want a banker delivering your baby?
No.
The whole
Someone who's walked a
addiction-
mile. Yeah.
Yeah, addiction is different than any other kind of counseling. It's a personal relationship with a client because they're telling you a story that most of the time they don't tell anybody or share.
They may be owning something for the first time.
Well,
talking to you.
because there's a nexus always. There's always a backstory as to why. I mean, for me, it was sexual abuse. And I can talk about it freely now because, I mean, I've worked on this for years with myself.
Well, when we get back from our break, I would like to talk a little bit more about your personal story and what motivates you to continue doing the good work you do to help people come back stronger.
My pleasure.
All righty.
Well, Jimmy, you know Joanna and you know her work, and she's actually worked with and helped quite a few of our personal injury clients because, believe it or not, a life-changing event like that can send you into a tailspin whenever your self-esteem is low, you lose your job, you're not the provider for your family that you used to be, or you're hurting all the time and everybody's sick of living with you. And that stuff gets to wearing on people, and it's so good to have a resource like Joanna Johnson to help our clients, but she helps our community in so many ways, and she could do so much more than somebody who sees you for 1 hour a week outside of your environment because she lives among the people she's helping. I've seen her work.
I love what she stands for. For me, what she stands for is this is a true success story. Somebody that has been sexually abused. She was a heroin addict since she was 14 years old, and then she overcame that, and she used that pain that she suffered and turned it into a purpose, a passion in her life. That is the ultimate comeback story. That is exactly what we're here talking about. And I love her because she does it with passion. She's had more than 30,000 psychological evaluations. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and to open those shelters, I mean, there's so much we can unpack and talk about there before we hear even the second part of her story. But she's just a walk your talk kind of a person who's going out into her community and making a difference. And I think that's why her numbers are so good because she follows her people. So we'll hear more in the second segment with Joanna Johnson right after this.
You know what's funny? When law firms advertise that they'll give a free consultation, every consultation we give is free, unless we can get you a settlement based on your injuries.
Right.
Every time you give me a call, it's free.
Yeah.
I want you to give me a call.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to charge you unless we actually get you something for your case.
That's right. You don't have to pay me anything unless I win the case.
Right.
And on top of that, I'm going to pay for all of the court costs and the deposition costs and medical records costs and expert opinion costs. All of that's coming out of my pocket, and if we don't win the case, then we eat those costs at no charge to you.
Right. So we don't take a case we don't believe in because it's not in our interest.
Right.
And we don't minimize or devalue your case because that's also not in our interest. Right. So it makes everything fair.
If you have a lawyer on a contingency fee, you can hire the very best lawyer.
And we are back. We're going to hear the second segment of my interview with Joanna Johnson when she gets a little bit more into her background and her story. Take a look.
Joanna, before our break, you mentioned that you have a history with some sexual abuse and that informed a lot of your life decisions and the things that you do now. Could you share some of that with us?
I was sexually abused from the time I was 4 till probably 11 or 12 when he died. His name was Patty. He was a friend of my father's. My family, my mother and father both knew. I told everybody, nobody believed me. And then at 14, I got involved with sex trafficking because that's what I knew. And sex didn't have any value to me. So I worked for a madam in New York. Her name was Toby Aiken, very wealthy woman, wrote a book. They had a movie, The New York Madam. And I had a love-hate relationship with her. And here I am going home to what everybody thought was a normal I don't remember all the lies, but I would tell them that I was in school, and I never went to school. I went to work. And Toby hired the girls that were pretty or very different looking. I was one of the very pretty ones, very small, long black hair, big blue eyes, etc. So she liked girls between the ages of 14 and 17.
Because there's obviously a need for them.
The market, they paid
them.
more for the girls,
Wow.
and it was all about services. So I knew that world very well, and I kept my two worlds very separate. But if it weren't for drugs, I probably could never have survived in the...
Yeah.
I mean, I was high most of the time I was working.
You would have to be to kind of numb yourself to
I did
to the
every day
reality.
before I went, and then after. I met my first husband. He was a nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn, and he had no clue.
Kind of like a shame part of your life that you didn't want to share?
No, I mean, I didn't care then. I didn't have a conscience in those years. I mean, I was as cold as ice. It didn't matter. I felt nothing.
What turned you around? What turned you from a person who was numb to the terrible reality of how they're being treated to somebody who wanted to help other people?
I think my first child.
Yeah.
When I gave birth to my first son, I wanted to be a good mom. I didn't know how because I was still using, but I walked away from the other stuff. And I mean, I could never be a wife. I could never be any of that because I had no feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I probably tortured my first husband if I think about it. No wonder he hates me so much.
Well, we all grow, we evolve, and
we did.
sometimes we can't grow and evolve.
And
with the
becoming a
person we
social
choose.
worker was never anything I actually ever thought would happen. I mean, I never had plans to do anything.
What was the moment, the light bulb moment, or
When
how
I
did
got
you
clean in Woodstock, I said I need to go to school. And believe it or not, the first school I went to, I didn't even know if it was real. I only found out that I really had a degree when I graduated because it was an online program in 1964.
Wow, unheard of.
So they didn't,
Yeah.
you didn't know about that. And then I found out it was really, that I really had a bachelor's degree. And then from there it just went forward. I had my master's by the time I got my bachelor's when I was 32. I had my first master's when I was 35, and then I had my second when I was 37.
That's awesome. I love to hear stories like that where people go back to school as an adult, as a parent, because I think you make more of it. I think it's more meaningful to you whenever you have to work so hard and sacrifice so hard.
I found that
for it.
education actually was therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
It gave me, but my real healing started back in Canada when I went through the sweat lodges and I went through traditional healing. And then I started to work with a psychiatrist in a little town called St. Albert, Alberta, and he put me through something called Disassociation Therapy. And that's when I started to really heal, and that was
Start developing those emotional connections again.
correct. And then at that point I went to work as the head of tribal council and built shelters, built roads, started programs, and it was from there on to do what we're doing now.
That's wonderful. And I wonder, I don't want to say your age, but you certainly can if you like.
80.
There you go, 80. I am amazed at how you go and you help so many people. So before we let you go this time, I've had you as a guest on some other programs, and everybody wants more, Joanna. So tell us, though, what services that you are offering and how do
Okay,
people
so
get in touch with you for help?
Avalon is offering anything from any kind of addiction services to domestic violence services. We still teach at the prison every Thursday.
And you're trying to
We
help
do a
address
lot of work, but right now we have a goal, which we don't take funding from anything, so we never have very much money. But we're trying to write some grants because we really see a need to bring counseling to our rural areas.
Yes.
Our rural areas are exploding right now, and they have no place to go.
Exploding with the addiction and the
oh my
problems that
God,
go with
meth,
that.
heroin, pills, ecstasy, crank, ice. I mean, it's all there, and it's so sad because no driver's license, so how do you get to your appointments? No counseling in the areas, so there's nobody you can go to.
There's no one to keep you encouraged despite all these roadblocks.
So we're trying to raise enough money right now, so if anybody is interested in donating, we'd love to have it. We'd like to open satellite offices in Panacea for sure. Carabel desperately needs one. Madison desperately needs one. Liberty County desperately needs one.
These are places, I think, that because they're small and not as populated, we don't hear as much about the need, but there is so much when you
Just
talk
take a
to the
look
local
at the
sheriffs,
numbers
everybody.
from the courts of
Yeah.
people who live in those counties. I mean, it staggers the imagination how many. My company is a small sort of, we represent, I think we are the representation of rural Florida, Avalon, because that's who we are. We started in Crawfordville. I mean, so, but if you look at the amount of probationary people from the rural areas, the numbers are staggering. We're on third generation now, fourth generation. We've seen the grandfathers, we've seen the fathers, we've seen the mothers. Now we have the children, all of the specific families. And the reason being is that they get caught up in this web with no place to go.
Right.
They have no driver's license, there's no jobs, they have no support systems.
Limited income. All of
Very
that.
limited income. I mean, so they come to us. We charge $25 for sessions.
Wow.
I mean, and that's a counseling session, right? The average is $75, but we charge $25.
And even then, a lot of people can't
They don't
afford
have
a
$25. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for making time to come speak with us
My
today.
pleasure.
Thank you for everything you're doing at Avalon Treatment Centers, and I think everybody knows how to reach you. They can contact us to get in
Right.
touch with you, but thank you for what you're doing, and keep fighting the good fight, lady.
We are.
All righty. Thank you.
Wow.
She is an incredible woman.
Yeah.
You know what struck me? The big takeaway for me, Dana, is the power of love that changed her with her for a couple things. One, her first child. And that was a big thing for me in my spiritual progress is when Sophia was born. That made a huge difference in my life, changed me, so I can relate to that. But not just the love of her first child, but it's also the love of the boyfriend that took her out into the wilderness. How many times do we see with these stories, there's almost always a critical person that shows concern, that shows some love, that turns out to be that person, that conversation turns out to be the turning point for the person's life.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always that one person who's kind of the catalyst in all of these stories. And she was very lucky that he was heard by her children and that she heard him. Because a lot of times that doesn't happen. A lot of times that just says, oh, you're going to ruin my fun. I'm going to go find somebody new to continue partying with. So there's just a couple of moments in her life that she was primed to hear the information that was given to her. So she took those chances. But boy, she didn't have an easy path.
She didn't have an easy path, but she took the hard path and she came out better. And now the whole community is benefiting from it.
They are.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that when we come back from the break.
I went to lunch with one of my former clients the other day, and she's doing great. She took the money from her settlement and she started her own company buying and selling vehicles, which is really cool because she was in a car crash and then needed a new vehicle. And so now she's able to help other folks out.
most of our clients, they find that one of the most frustrating things is the dealing with the vehicle.
Oh, well, losing your car can totally disrupt your life.
You could lose your livelihood over it. If you can't get to work, or you know, what's the worst thing with our clients is we're just trying to help them get well, but if they can't get to the health care that they need, you know, that's just another setback.
One of the typical things about a comeback story is you take the pain and the struggles and the challenges that you've been through and you use that as the fire that kind of motivates you to do something good for other people.
Yeah.
And so I love that because now our client did exactly that, like literally to the T.
And we are back talking about the show. Our guest today has been Joanna Johnson from the Avalon Treatment Centers. You know, you talked about a couple of touch points with her where love reached out to her and it
Yes.
changed her life. I was thinking too about the women she said she was kind of living in commune
Yes.
with in Woodstock.
She mentioned that she had that one of the things of the people that she treats that is usually lacking is a support system.
Yeah.
And that's what she's talking about. And that's why they're using the power of love, the power of community to get people better. Like, for example, when people do interventions.
Yeah.
You know, they do drug addiction interventions. That's the community, the people, the family, the people they love coming and saying, listen, you are important to us. We need you. This is not just about you. This is about us and we need you.
Right.
When someone feels loved, they feel needed, then they're more likely to make a big turnaround.
And again, I think that is why she has the number she has on the good performance, because she's reinforcing all those
Yes.
things. She's saying, we're still in this community. I'm going to still run into you at
Yeah.
you know, Winn-Dixie, or I'll be seeing you at the Crab Festival next week, or whatever it is. She's in the community with people, and then they know that they can go to her for treatment. But that's what I would encourage people to do, is to look at, you know, especially if you're in a rural, underserved area, think about things that can help your community. It could be interventions, but if you can't follow up what the help is needed after the intervention, you can't do much. That's why it's so important to have internet access so people can, you know, go online to some of these resources that they need. They can have, you know, maybe an online conference, you know, counseling or group support to keep their sobriety mission going.
I would encourage everybody, if you have somebody, if you know somebody that needs the help, encourage them to seek the help, like Joanna Johnson or some other therapist.
Yeah, and then if you know somebody who's got a great comeback stronger story, reach out to us at Facing Crooks. We'd love to have them on the show and share more content like today. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
And you know what the insurance company offered him? $5,000.
Really?
He's completely blind, and they offer him $5,000. Ask him to sign a release.
To a lot of people, especially when they're hurting and when they're down and when they're vulnerable, $5,000 is a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
And they're not looking at the value of what has been lost. They're not looking at what it would take to make that person whole, which is our job.
Yeah.
That's our job. Their job isn't. Their job is to save the insurance company money.
Right.
And they look at this person and they go, I bet $5,000 would get your full attention. Right. And they come in and they dangle it with a settlement release, and then once you sign it, you're done. You can't come back to us and ask us to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That can't go away.
My client didn't accept the $5,000. We took him all the way to trial. We got a $5 million verdict.